All right, back here at KPOO San Francisco, 89.5 FM. My name is Derek Keller. I appreciate all those who listened, and congratulations to Elliot Roth, who won a pair of tickets to my last guest show coming up. That's Mason Jennings at Yoshi's this weekend, Friday and Saturday. Feel free to go pick up a pair of tickets if you are interested. Right now, I am joined by Kristen DiAngelo. Kristen, say hi.
Hi.
And Pearl, who are both featured in a documentary called American Courtesans, which, now let me get this straight, I have not seen it yet, but I read about it and heard about it, and I can't wait to see it. But and it's also directed by James Johnson, and you produced it, Kristen, co-produced it. And American Courtesans is an inside look at the world of prostitution, and it also drives home the point that right now it's not a very safe world that you live in, and you get stories from 11 different women and their struggles within the prostitution world. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And the overall theme to this documentary is that you would like to improve safety, potentially legalize, decriminalize prostitution in the United States, and you do that by hammering home how dangerous it can be.
I think so. That is my goal of it. If you watch the documentary itself, everybody's left to come away with whatever, conclusion they want to draw. Really what the documentary does is it just follows 11 of our lives, sort of our choices, what our lives were like, what happened, how we entered this world, and what's happened since we've been here, both the pros and cons, exactly as they happen through our eyes. Now, that allows the viewer to draw whatever conclusions they want. We don't tell people what to think. We don't tell people how laws should be or anything else. It's purely about our lives and our life stories.
And now, if you don't mind, now you both have worked as a prostitute for many years, yes?
Yes.
When did you start as a prostitute, and what was your setting before that? Where were you from? Single child?
I was I got pregnant really early. I was 16 years old. But it was probably about in 1973 is when I first heard about the brothels in Nevada. I had known somebody that had gone there.
I see.
A really good friend of mine. And so when she told me about it, I was curious and I wanted to see what it was about.
Right. So you were in that area, Nevada already, or California?
No, I was in California at the time, and she had come from Nevada and told me about her experience. And so I wanted to check it out and see what it was about.
I had some questions about that place, too. So you went there. How old were you when you went there to start working?
I was 21.
Do you need to be 21 or isn't it 18?
You need to be of legal age. You need to be, yes, you need to be of legal age.
So when you're asking ages from us, you have to watch, especially when it has to do with places like that. It was a different time back then.
Well, I was just curious. I thought 18 was the legal age for consent.
Some of them are 18, some of them are 21. The places that are what they call bar joints, where it's actually you're walking in a bar, you're supposed to be 21. Then they have what they call pick joints, where girls line up and there's a bar there, but it isn't a bar. It's like a parlor they go into. And there you can be 18 to work. However, back then, many of us had fake IDs. There wasn't all this technology. And so most of us were too scared to go up or underage, so we would get a fake ID, and then we would work that way, and that gave us some protection. That's a little harder nowadays. I don't think that happens very often with fingerprinting and all the things that goes on.
Well, it brings up another issue, which is it would be a lot safer if we knew the girl's age for sure and if we regulated it and all that.
I think it would be a lot safer if
people are enticed to lie at this point because it's illegal anyways.
Yeah. You're never going to know the truth about anything because everybody is so protective of their own life. You don't want to go to jail. You don't want to be arrested. So what can I say to stay free? It's really sort of how it goes.
And are we talking about the Bunny Ranch? That's the only one I know. Are there other spots and it's not even all in Nevada. It's only one county. Isn't that right?
No. It's we were just reading the other day. I believe there are only about 19 open nowadays. There used to be about 36.
Right.
And I'm throwing out numbers, but pretty close to those numbers. They're almost in every county except the counties like inside Las Vegas because it has to do with the population. It has to be a population less than this many.
I find that so odd that the one place in Nevada that you can't have legal prostitution is the place where everybody goes.
It's about, well, they take you right outside the county line. Same thing in Reno or Sparks.
Right.
You go right outside the county line, and there are all the ranches. But they have them throughout Nevada, including the small towns, Ely, Fallon, Battle Mountain, Wells. There's so many towns. Elko, yeah.
And that is the only state in the United States that has legal prostitution, yes?
Correct. It used to be that in Rhode Island it was decriminalized, but I believe about 5 years ago they criminalized it again. So up until 5 years ago it was decriminalized, so you could work if you were working indoors and weren't on the street in Rhode Island. Most people don't know that.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, it was just decriminalized. They didn't arrest people for it. It was off the books. They didn't do it. I think about 5 years ago they criminalized it again, and now they're arresting people.
Okay. And did you also work? You must have also worked in Nevada.
I've worked when I was a kid, from the streets to the massage parlors, to years in Nevada. I think it was 8 years in Nevada on and off, but about 8 years, to escort services, running my own escort service. And now after that I went out and sort of erected my own website and started on my own. But yeah.
And now, how did you get involved with this film? You're one of the producers, but you didn't direct it. James Johnson's the director, but you're featured in it throughout, and you're asking the majority of the questions, basically.
I had become aware that there was a need for education. It's an educational piece, truly. We just finished screening it at University of New Hampshire. We're going to do it at University of San Francisco in February. So we've been showing it in academic curriculum areas and trying to change the current stigma and stereotype. I became involved in it because through time I became very aware that so many sex workers don't have a voice. I liken it to where black rights were, women rights were, gay rights were years ago. You know, you're thought of being not intelligent. You can't make decisions for your own self. Somebody else claims that you're being trafficked or not. You don't get to decide that. You know, you have no rights under the law. You don't have the voice other people have. And although we would like to believe that the United States has been very progressive in all areas, we are one of the few countries that prostitution is not legalized or decriminalized. About a year and a half ago, the World Health Organization and the United Nations came out and called for countries like us to decriminalize. They're like, you're, sort of contributing to the spread of AIDS. Stop. But our laws are so intermingled with our parochial values, with
I was going to ask. I was going to say exactly that. Do you think it's mostly religion that's holding back the progression in the United States, not just of prostitution, but decriminalized drugs?
Absolutely, that and
gambling
and the ability for politicians to use us for political fodder. Most of the stings and raids go on directly prior to an election period, in conjunction with somebody announcing their reelection, when somebody's ratings are slipping in the polls. We are a very inexpensive, low-cost way of getting brownie points that make big media splashes.
Right.
So we're victimized by the media very often because it works for the politicians. They beyond that, they never really go after us. So it's like on again, off again, on again, off again. And, we get a little shell shock going back and forth because the laws are not stable. They don't apply. It's only when they need to make that headline that happens.
I'm sure you'll both disagree with me on this, but I haven't I feel like I have not heard too much talk about prostitution in the mass media one way or the other lately. I feel like that's a topic that kind of is slipped out of sight just for the time being, but I'm sure it'll be
slipped out of the sight.
We have guns to deal with and pot's being legalized.
Slave trade. Human sex trade. That's what they do, trafficking. Mm-hmm. But what began happening as we've evolved and as people become more educated, what I started seeing is every time there was a prostitution sting, those politicians began getting attacked. It was backfiring on them. So what they did is they changed it to a trafficking sting. Now all of a sudden they're getting brownie points again. So they've sort of wiped the prostitution word a little bit out of the media because
that's the word I don't see anymore, right?
No. It's because we're in economic period where things are very tight. It's a misdemeanor. It's a traffic offense in most places. So politicians beginning getting ridiculed for going after us. However, they do a trafficking sting, and very often the majority of the people are over 18 and aren't being trafficked who are arrested. But if they get a trafficking sting, well, even us, I mean, none of us wants to see kids exploited. So that once again gets them the recognition they need.
Now let me switch gears a little bit, because I also study film. I love documentaries, and I've made a documentary myself a long time ago. What was your role as producer? Did you get the girls together? Was this your idea, and then you found a director to work with?
The idea came, James Johnson was directing some adult content I had for Adult Site, and we at one time, we were in New York City. And it began raining, and we had to make another plan of where to shoot for the day. And I began putting out emails and calls, and I got a hold of somebody at a place called not the Power Exchange, that's here, Paddles in New York. And it's the oldest running S&M club in the United States. And Michael, the owner, said, you know what, come and you can film here during the day. I didn't know what I was going to do. It wasn't what we were planning on doing, but what we were planning on doing, we got rained out. Mm-hmm. So we had to change plans. We went there, and long story short, what happened is after a night of filming, I wasn't used to interviewing or what I was going to do. Michael agreed to be interviewed on camera, and him and I began just talking. Next thing we knew, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm serious. And the crew had been totally silent. Nobody had said anything.
And this is just you speaking?
Yeah, just me and him talking. We were just talking, and somewhere in there it gave way from actually knowing we were on film to talking about what our lives were like, because we had so many similarities, you know, just the stigma, the stereotype, the hiding, it's just so many similarities. And so he's a career or was a career firefighter for the state of New York. So he lived 2 lives, and he had this club for 28 years. And he had to make sure nobody found out, because then all of a sudden everything he did as a firefighter would be discredited, you know. And so we talked about this. We get out in the car that night, and, you know, they're quiet for a few seconds, and the crew all began talking. And what happened that night is we became aware that the actual realities of our life was so much more fascinating than the porn you usually see. I mean, these people could not stop talking. Wow. They were just amazed. They'd never heard anything. They were saying, I've learned so much. I didn't even know what you guys were talking about. So that night, the director and I went back and we began brainstorming, and we realized that we never speak up. And I had been saying that we have a real problem here in the United States. The laws are getting crazier and crazier, and things are getting worse for us, and more people are being attacked, and we have no lifeline to try to stop these predators. And so that night, him and I sat down and realized that we could do this. Like, we could shed light on an industry that's so often dehumanized and belittled and shoved in the shadows. And that's what sort of started this.
Had you seen other documentaries about prostitution? I'm thinking of 2 right now. One that I really liked was Client 9, the Elliot Spitzer one. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that.
Very good. And then another one actually was filmed, I think, mostly in the Bay Area. It's called American Pimp. Uh-huh. Have you seen that?
I think I might have seen that one a while ago.
Yeah, I mean, that has to do, it's probably 10 years old, maybe older, but it has to do most with pimping and not prostitution.
See,
and I know that's not what yours is about.
No.
Right.
Everything overlaps. This is a sex trade,
right.
So things touch each other all over the place in this industry. The difference between this one and that is it's not done by any journalist. It's done from us on the inside.
Right.
So it's not like somebody's out on the outside looking in. Mm-hmm. These are our voices. There's no narration in the whole film, period.
Just the ladies speaking.
Just us talking. And it takes a second to clip back and forth. We've actually won awards for the editing at this point. But it's a very different technique because we didn't want an outside party speaking for us. So, yeah, that's how we did it.
When I come back from a quick song here, I want to discuss more about the film. And this article that I just read, legislation was passed. It's a small thing on the surface, but it could have big implications in San Francisco. It's about San Francisco's massage parlors, which I think you both have knowledge of that industry. So I'm going to go away for a quick minute. We'll be right back. I'm with Kristen DiAngelo and Pearl of the documentary American Courtesans. Thank you for joining us. We'll be right back on KPOO. All right, back here on KPOO. Derek Keller here with my guests at the moment, Kristen DiAngelo and Pearl. And I find it interesting, Pearl, that must not, I'm guessing that's not your real name.
Callahan.
Pro.
Oh, okay. I mean, well, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about is that many women in the sex industry use a false alias, which obviously protects them in some way, especially if they're in a dancing, a nightclub. You don't want somebody knowing your name and following you and all that.
Almost every woman uses, or man. I mean, there's women, men, transgender now working in the sex industry. And
True.
Probably always has been. We just talked less about it before. But yeah, it's pretty imperative, not just for keeping yourself safe from, people always think it's about law enforcement, but it's very often about predators. We are targets for serial killers. I mean, we're a fertile training ground for them. They could do stuff to us, and nobody pursues it.
Well, unfortunately, as I heard in another interview that you gave, that's I think what somebody said. You're basically like the playground for people with all kinds of ill will, because at the end of the day, you don't have the same representation in court, which is a real tragedy in this country, that you don't have the same rights when it comes to, I mean, technically, on paper, you do, but there's all kinds of trickery and ways to get around that.
You would think that, but right now, like tomorrow, there's a hearing. I have it on Larkin Street about an amendment to a law for the Victims' Compensation Fund. As it stands right now, if you are a sex worker or have previously been incarcerated, but if you're a sex worker, you are not eligible for victim compensation even when you put away a predator. You are excluded from the law that everybody else. So if somebody breaks in my window and violently rapes me and beats me, I could prosecute him if I want, but I'm one of the few people who's going to have to pay for that rape kit. All the rest of our residents, it's paid for. So I am not covered.
Again, this documentary, American Courtesans, is available on Amazon, Google Instant Play,
VOD,
Comcast,
DVD, Blu-ray,
iTunes
in 5 countries.
Wow, I'm gonna go ahead and play part of the trailer right here. So listen to this.
A well-to-do family. I've been a sex worker since I was 13.
From a very early age, there was somebody who had what I call a hands-on problem. I had something men wanted, a powerful enough thing to make good men do bad things.
She was very physically abusive. The only person in my life I was ever scared of was my mother.
I remember him being on top of me. I tried to scream. I remember the taste of blood and wondering, is that mine or his?
I don't know what to do. He goes, hey. He goes, I know how you can make money.
I see a star in you. You love it up on stage. My wife is Miss Nude Universe.
Within 6 months of living with my husband, he raised his hand to me and I left and I never went back. I don't know what primal instinct came over to me to say I wasn't putting up with that. I'd rather be homeless. And it was the street girls that took me under their wing and were kind to me.
Joe liked to freebase.
I had to let him know that it was...
Well, there's a little bit of the trailer there for you. It looks like a very well-produced documentary. Many interviews with these ladies. And like you said, there's no narration. It's just the words from the ladies themselves. And they're from all walks of the sex trade industry?
All walks.
Walks of life.
All walks of life,
exactly.
Totally, yeah. I always say that we're representative of the demographics of the population as a whole in the United States. You know, we come from rich families. We come from poor families. We're every race, we're every creed, we're every religion, we're every age, believe it or not. People start very young. Some of them being trafficked and some not. Just because you're a minor doesn't mean you're being trafficked. There's so many transgender youth that go into this because they're either kicked out of their home or runaways and have no other options. But, yeah, we're representative totally of the population.
What do you hope will happen to the world of prostitution in the next 10, 20 years?
I'm hoping that the stigma and stereotype will fall away a bit and that people will be able to discuss us without cringing and believe that we're some kind of deviant person. I will also hope that we will have the same rights under the law, that we will be able to pick up the phone and call 911 when we're a victim of a vicious attack. And hopefully we will be able to decriminalize and allow people to survive without constantly being chased down with these crazy taxpayer wastes of money because it just happens all the time.
What would you say to a 16-year-old runaway that you meet in one of your when you're giving a speech or discussing your film, who needs to support herself and is considering joining this world? What would you say to someone right now?
If they're 16, I would tell them
18.
18. Okay,
Yeah,
if they're 18,
legally allowed to.
What I would say, honestly, is I would love to help them, that they need to read and learn and educate themselves and learn from those who have been attacked and things happen so that they stay safe and alive. The problem is right now, if I say to somebody, here's how you don't get murdered, don't do this, don't do that, I technically, under the lies of the law, have just committed a federal crime. So anytime I try to tell somebody how to stay alive in this industry, because of the new Trafficking Act, I am aiding and abetting them in committing a crime. It's sort of like conspiracy, which bumps it up to a felony, which carries federal time. So what I would tell them is I would love to help them. I hope that they're here in a year, 2 years, 3 years. I hope that they make it. Please learn from our mistakes, listen, and please don't get yourself killed.
Does Nevada have the right idea? Are they doing it correctly? Is there a lot of room for improvement? If the rest of the United States adopted what Nevada has, would that be safe enough for you?
There's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah.
It at least gives people a place to go where they have security. You're not worried about being beaten or raped or anything else. The only problem with that being the end-all and be-all of prostitution in the United States is the idea that we are not capable of running our own businesses. The only way we can run our own business is if we give the majority of our money to somebody else, which once again doesn't make sense. Now, it's a great learning ground. It's a great place to understand the industry and decide if you want to be in it. But if you're capable of running a business for yourself, and if you're a mother and want to be there with your children or anything like that, I think that we should be allowed to do the same thing other people are doing. We shouldn't be mandated to work from somebody who's taking the majority of our earnings.
Well, speaking of having a place to do it, I wanted to bring this up. Now, I heard, I don't think you mentioned this yet, but that you started in this industry by working in a massage parlor in San Francisco.
Correct. San Francisco and Sacramento, the two places, yes.
And, I mean, there's a lot of stigma attached to just massage parlor, those words, especially in San Francisco. There was just a story. I want to say this real quick. On Tuesday when they had the elections, the Board of Supervisors approved legislation that would punish brothel owners, not individual masseuses, with penalties, fines, and permit revocations. And under the ordinance, the business owners would be responsible for paying those fines, not individual women that are participating in it. And one of the ways they would like to go about legitimizing things is that women wear a photo ID while they're giving massages, but they're trying to stamp out sexual acts in a massage parlor. And but to me, it's just there's such a hypocrisy. There are more than enough newspapers and things that are just loaded with sex ads in the back for massage parlors, and get a massage to your house or your apartment, and escorts and things like that. How can there be this hypocrisy?
It constantly, this happens. I really think it has to do with somebody needing some political brownie points at some point. So they come up with this law or legislation, let's do this, let's do this. It isn't going away. Massage parlors aren't going away. Street prostitution isn't going away. Independent escorts aren't going away. The brothels in Nevada aren't going away. We aren't going away. And we can keep going around like criminalize the workers, criminalize the clients, criminalize the owners of the business. I mean, it's all attempt to legislate our control we have over our own bodies. As soon as we have an honest discussion about the inability, this will never happen. They will never be able to stop it. If we can be honest about that and understand that, then maybe we can try to make it safer for all involved. And I don't believe that constitutes criminalization. It constitutes making sure that everybody's protected and do things in a safe manner. And that has nothing to do with tickets or going to jail or anything like that. That is in a safe manner. That's just feeding money into the government. So I'm not sure why they did that. I mean, it's sort of like just an in run around another law. I mean, to still criminalize something. I wanted to change so bad. I'm hoping it will.
Well, personally, I think that things will change soon because the way I look at it, three things that have been demonized in this country for so long: drugs, gambling, and prostitution. I mean, right now, technically, in the state of California, it's illegal to possess marijuana, and gambling is illegal. But right now, if I wanted to, I could go to a cannabis dispensary, pick up an ounce of weed, drive up to one of these Indian casinos, and spend all my money. So I really do think in a matter of, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, that something will click where there will be a legitimate gray area that prostitution can rest in, similar to medical marijuana and gambling right now, Indian casinos.
We're hoping so. We're
well, I mean, I wish that things would become much more. I mean, the same with marijuana and gambling. I wish it would be completely. This is how it is. The federal government allows it. But I think in a short while, hopefully, there will be something more legitimate than a seedy little massage parlor, which seems like now that's, as you were saying, that's one of the most important things is to have a place to be that's not on a street corner and not, somebody's basement. So, I mean, right now that seems to be, unfortunately, the safest thing is to become a masseur in a massage parlor.
Any time that you have an establishment that is your own in your own territory, you are at least in a place where there are other people around you who can support you. The crime rate drops as far as beatings, rapes, murders, robberies. Anytime you decentralize and send people out of those places, you send them out to the street where they're going to unknown places and unknown people, and they're alone. And once again, that gives it becomes a very fertile breeding ground for predators because nobody even knows who you are or where you're at,
I'm speaking to Kristen DiAngelo and Pearl, her friend, that are both featured in the award-winning documentary American Courtesans, directed by James Johnson. Again, you can find it on iTunes, Amazon, VOD, all kinds of different places. We are on KPOO San Francisco 89.5 FM right now. Just a couple more questions for you. And from a film perspective, this is the first film you ever made.
Absolutely.
You're a documentarian now,
yes.
Award-winning.
I know.
Doesn't that feel good?
It does.
Would you like to continue to make other documentaries, maybe not in the sex industry, just in general? Or what are your film and artistic plans, endeavors?
You sort of get hooked on it. I mean, there's this huge thing of having an idea and bringing it to life on screen so people can hear that thought you had in your head that's just so powerful. We've been talking about, still saying the sex industry because that's my whole life. That's what I know. And because that's what I know, you become sort of an expert in it, which why would you go do something you
Who
don't
better
know about?
to describe it and put it on film?
Absolutely. So we've actually been throwing around a couple other things. We've been throwing around doing one on the differences between the sex trade and sex trafficking or human trafficking so people can understand just by seeing it versus somebody giving a definition. And we've also been thinking about doing or toying about doing one from the client's perspective because they are so often demonized. I mean, we love to just take the clients and, knock them off pedestals and treat them horribly. So,
not people in the sex industry don't like to ridicule clients.
but
right, the outside
States,
world. That's. I mean, look at the politicians that have gotten in trouble lately. How many are getting called, names by people who have also participated in it? Again, the hypocrisy is astounding.
Crazy. Yeah.
And, in one case, the Anthony Weiner thing, I'm sure you heard about it. He didn't even have sex with any of these girls. He was just texting pictures to them. That's borderline harmless.
There needs to be a point where we go, we're hiring our politicians because of their ability to do the job.
Right. Bill Clinton was a fantastic president.
Yes, and who cares?
I could care less.
My whole thing is he probably needed whatever happened. My gosh, he was the president.
He's stressed out.
Just stop. I mean, anybody who puts themselves, dedicates their life to our country, their sex life should just be totally taboo for the American public because it's none of our business.
Right.
I don't know where we make it our business, where we decide who they should sleep with, when, and how. I mean, it is not my business, and I should have enough respect for that person to really believe that, and so should everybody else. But we don't seem to respect people's privacies or their free will, like what they want to do. But that had nothing to do with his ability to do the job, or does it with any other politician. Whether I agree with their politics or not, that kind of stuff shouldn't happen.
I think the last question I have for you, I'll let you go, is that I always wanted to know, What does a woman in the sex industry, a prostitute or stripper, what do they think about a client who is coming to them maybe several times? I mean, is something click in your head where you become, obviously you're offering your body and sexual services, but is there something mentally that you are now trying to provide for this person in kind of a therapeutic way? Because, I feel like, I guess I'm being judgmental, but a person who goes to many or the same prostitute over and over again, they have to realize that this woman is not going to become a life partner in most circumstances.
I think most people do. However, there is a huge therapeutic component, not just with somebody who comes to see one of us one time, but repeatedly. There's a human connection and a human need that society goes over. We have this whole idea that if you're a baby, you need all this touch and nurturing and love and people to listen to you and care about you. And I don't know where you turn a certain age and like there's this magic wand wave, especially with males, and you're not supposed to have any needs. I mean,
you're not supposed to discuss them.
No. And so there is this huge gap between what people need and actually what they have in life. And I think that we very nicely fit into that gap and are able to provide intimacy, a safe place for people to talk, a place for people to grow and heal and be nurtured in a compassionate, non-judgmental way. I mean, it becomes very wonderful, and I think that that's something that people never think of. They never think of, whether you're a person who has an absolutely typical life or whether you're somebody in a wheelchair with MS. Nobody ever defines that there's a human need. And I think that we are, one of the things I found, especially with the filming of this film, is that we are nurturers. We are innately caretakers. We like to give, and we like to make people happy and add to their lives. And that was one very common thread among all of us. We may have worked in different cities, on different levels, in different ways. But it seemed to me that after I began talking to all the people in the film, everybody viewed themselves as a nurturer. Everybody received a satisfaction out of touching another human soul and making their life better. And so, yeah, that's a very big part of our job.
Very well said. And on that note, I'm gonna let you ladies leave. And again, American Courtesans. Search for it on the web. You'll find it on iTunes, Amazon, VOD. And also, you're going to be screening it in the theater at some of these festivals too, right? You're still in the festival stage as well.
We've done almost all of our festivals, but we've just rolled out our educational component.
Okay.
And like I said, in February, we will be screening at University of San Francisco. All these screenings will be in theaters at the universities, so if you listen to them, they will be free to the public.
Awesome.
And afterwards, there will be a panel of sex workers to answer any questions the audience has.
Well, that's where I want to see it, because I want to see it on a big screen.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for coming in. And again, you'll be in here tomorrow, too, on Safi's show, and you'll have a woman's perspective from this side of it. Not that you're, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A woman interviewer, at least.
That'll be
all right. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back in just a couple of minutes with Jennifer Sauer. And actually, I didn't get to get into this with you ladies, but maybe another time. But this is a foster parent liaison. I wanted to get into the fact that how many unwanted pregnancies take place in our society, and would prostitution have any effect on that? Positive or negative? I know it would.
Well, we just talked to Pearl, and she was 16. She was, so she was from an inner city. And when I say an inner city, just tell really fast about your father, like brief, so you can hear.
I was raised by my dad. There was a family. My family had 8 kids in my family. My mom and dad were married for many, many years, and then my mother left my dad, which he raised all of us. Okay, so my father was mother and father. And so we always lived in a rented house. We never owned anything. And he tried to provide for us. So when I got pregnant, the last thing I could do was add to his problems. Add another mouth to feed,
right,
so to speak. Okay. So for me, I had to be responsible, and I had to figure this out on my own.
I understand, yeah. I mean, that's a whole other issue that maybe we'll have time to get into another time.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
All right.
Thank you so much, Derek.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming on the show. And again, Jennifer Sauer will be here in just a couple of minutes, a foster parent liaison from Seneca Family of Agencies. We'll talk to her about all kinds of stuff. So stay tuned. You're listening to KPOO San Francisco 89.5 FM.